Scott Case, CEO of Startup America. Scott, welcome to TechCrunch TV.
Thanks for having me.
Scott, we usually don't feature footwear on this show because it's a show about technology and entrepreneurialism,
Sure.
but you have the most remarkable footwear.
I do. I have some custom Chuck Taylors made by Converse. Anybody can go to converse.com and make your own. Mine actually say Startup America on the back. And when I took on this role, I decided that I wanted to kind of represent what America was all about, and whether it's literally the invention of high-top sneakers, which we didn't have. Basketball players actually played in these until we had better technology. All across the country, this idea that we should be running, we should be innovating, we should be creating things that are new, and I wanted to bring some of that to the table as we talk to all kinds of different companies around the country, and also to represent, particularly in the markets where entrepreneurship and startup economies aren't as strong like they are here in the Valley.
Scott, the great challenge, of course, in America, and this is why I'm so interested in your organization, is turning the country again into a startup nation. Israel seems to be succeeding, China seems to be succeeding, but America is struggling. Why is that?
I would say it a little bit differently. I would say that the rest of the world is catching up to America, and that having traveled around the country and been to some unbelievable cities like Nashville and Chicago and Detroit that are building great businesses.
How much traveling, by the way, do you do?
I do a lot of traveling. I spend probably 4 to 5 days a week on the road.
And mostly away from the Valley and away from the West Coast.
Mostly away from the West Coast.
So in the real America?
Well, in the part of America that's still unbelievably innovative. They're creating great companies. Some of the phenomenons around these accelerator programs like Techstars are finding their way into communities all around the country, and the entrepreneurs and the startups are coming out of the woodwork and they're interacting with each other, and we're seeing that across the country. So I think it's time for us to step up our game. I think the rest of the world is catching up to us, so it's more about us playing a leadership role for ourselves and taking it to the next level, and that involves us thinking about startups and the importance that they have. It's a category that we've taken for granted. We look at and we think that big successful companies sort of magically appeared there, but every large company in America started with 1 or 2 people with an idea. Whether that's HP or Microsoft or Apple or Dell or Federal Express, they all started someplace, and we've got to remember that, and we've got to elevate that up to the next level. And I could see it, the challenge in my own life, where I have children. I'd go to middle schools, and raise your hand. What do you want to be when you grow up? Nobody said I want to be an entrepreneur. Nobody said I want to be a founder of a company. Nobody said I wanted to create some. They might want to create some things, but they weren't. They didn't identify at that founding spirit. Every city in America was created by some crazy entrepreneur who showed up and decided that this was going to be the place that they were going to live and build and draw roots. And we've got to go back to that, because every city in America has those stories. We've got to draw those stories up and inspire the next generation of startups and founders.
So we have officially, I think it's 9 or 10% unemployment in America. Unofficially, perhaps 15%. So one or 2 out of 10 Americans are unemployed. They all could be entrepreneurs, of course.
Well,
what needs to change? How do we realize this unrealized potential in America?
There's an enormous opportunity there, and a part of it is there's multiple roles to play in the startup ecosystem. So there's a very small
there's that
group
word
of people,
again, ecosystem.
Sorry, in America, in the economy. There's founders. Those are a small group of people.
Those
pretty
unique,
crazies
right?
Are there, and they're very unique. They bring attributes to the table.
Are they born founders? Can they be made?
I think that they have to have certain attributes around the way that they look at the world. Some of it could come up from upbringing. I'm not an expert on the psychology of why founders behave the way they behave, but if you observe what happens to them, they tend to be problem solvers. They tend to have a natural instinct for finding seams and opportunities, so they tend to be very opportunistic. And I think that we have really smart people in this country that don't become founders necessarily, but have the founding instincts. So there's founders, there's people who join founders, some really great people. That's the next platform. Many of those people become the next generation of founders. So joining a startup, there's a lot of environments that go against people joining a startup. Oh, that's really risky. Oh, what if they run out of funding? So culturally, we've got to adopt this idea that actually going to a startup is a really good idea. You're going to learn a lot, you'll learn a lot faster, you get more responsibility more quickly. So joining that. And then the last piece, I think, if you're looking at unemployment across America, it's that if you are in a place where you bring a specific skill, there are plenty of problems and opportunities that you can address and solve. And so I think that what we need to move to ramp up our economy is to take responsibility and to the next level and say, the jobs that we lost aren't coming back. The
You
new
mean
jobs,
the manufacturing?
every kind of job that got lost is not coming back. Companies, by definition, drive efficiency and productivity, and they drive the costs out of the system. So those jobs are going to be, new jobs will get created. Where do those new jobs get created? They get created by startups and across the country. So if you're unemployed, the opportunity here is to look at and say, I was doing this, now I've got to invest in my life and go after another track, because what I was doing before is unlikely to come back.
What about the role of government and politics? Do we need more inspirational founders in chief?
I think we need more serial entrepreneurs and founders to actively participate in their, whether it's in their state level or on a national level, to communicate in what the good news is for most founders in a nonpartisan way, that there are barriers in the way of their success. And it's important to have a wide range of voices, because different companies are at different stages and different founders are different ways, but we do have some barriers. One of them, it's been talked about a lot, certainly out here, is we have an immigration challenge. You've got unbelievable talent that's here, they're being educated here, and then they leave. We have an economic development challenge in that it's no longer a viable strategy to try to move one giant company from one state to another. You've got to home grow these organically. And so as founders, participating in making sure that the institutions in the state that you live in, for example, understand the role that startups play, and then what are the types of things we can do to help them, is really critical to our success. So we need participation in those places. But frankly, if I had a choice between a founder creating their next big company and the founder spending a bunch of time trying to work on policy, I'd build a great new company, because that's going to drive more for our economy. The other stuff will sort itself out over time.
Do we also have a cultural problem in terms of diversity? Why does it seem as if, particularly in Silicon Valley, all the startup entrepreneurs are male white dropouts of either Stanford or Harvard?
I think that's an unfair characterization. I think what we've seen is that there have been multiple waves of generations that have fit that bill, and we're carrying the momentum of those thoughts along. The Indian American community has become one of the fastest growing populations of founders. Women are stepping up and growing in a really fast way. Urban entrepreneurship is moving, and minority entrepreneurship is moving.
What's urban entrepreneurship?
Well, the focus on a minority or an urban-centric kind of view of entrepreneurship, and creating services and tools and things for people living in cities, for example. And again, traveling around the country, there are startups in all these walks of life, led by founders of all different types. So we need to, as America, and one of the goals for Startup America is, we need to elevate those people so that they have the same level of visibility that those white male dropouts do. We've sort of celebrated them a lot. We need to celebrate all these other people. And that's just a matter of time and us positioning them as the successes that they are. They really are the heroes in our economy, and so we need to step them up and give them more visibility. So my challenge for you is, you need to interview less people like me and more people like those unbelievable founders. And if you need help finding them, I'll bring them to you.
Well, you've made that promise on camera, so you can't get out of that.
I'm helping, I'll find them.
Finally, Scott, how do we all learn to be as optimistic as you and to wear such optimistic footwear?
Well,
do you wake up every morning as enthusiastic as you appear now?
I do. I love what I do. I
What's
get to work with
the key to being Scott Case?
Spend as much time as you can with startups, because the founders and the teams that are there, they're always optimistic. That's how we view the world, and we can't help ourselves. So if you want to feel good in the morning, go hang out with those people. And I have people who don't spend time in the startup community go, how come you're so happy? I go, come with me on a trip, and I'll take you to Nashville, Tennessee, and I'll show you 25 great companies started by some unbelievable people that are doing really amazing things. And it's happening all across the country. That's what gets me excited.
Well, Scott Case, the happiest guy to appear on TechCrunch TV with the most flamboyant software. Sorry, not software. That was a Freudian slip. Footwear.
They are kind of soft.
Soft footwear. Thank you for TechCrunch TV, and best of luck with with Startup America. Thank you, Scott.
Cool. Thanks. Thank you.
Excellent.